Hey, everybody, and welcome to the Praise Podcast. My name is Eric Lyda. I have the pleasure of being a part of this podcast each and every time. And, of course, as you know, that pleasure is not just mine. It is not only mine, because I share with the greatest co-host, the co-host above all other co-hosts. Of course, I am joined by the Brooke Paninsky is in the house today, and we are just geeked up. We're geeked up, Brooke, for another episode of the Praise Podcast. So, of course, we are so happy, honored, overjoyed, excited that you have stumbled across this podcast. You've sought it out. You have decided to hang out with us for the next, however many minutes.
You never know.
You never really know, but thank you. We appreciate you guys watching, listening. If you are listening, we always want to give the reminder that this podcast is now on YouTube. So if you have been a faithful listener all this time and you have still somehow... I don't think you could be a faithful listener and not know we're on YouTube. But maybe if you've just...
talk about it every time?
Yeah, because... yeah. But if you are, you just found this on a listening platform, just know that we are on YouTube and you can come and see our bubbly, smiling, bright, excited faces right now on YouTube. So that's a great way to join us. And of course, we always want to plug Instagram. We always want to plug our website, thepraisepodcast.com. That's a great space to get resources.
I love that.
Resources.
And we're actually going to be updating that soon.
Yeah.
So that's exciting.
Yeah, we've got some new.
Yeah.
I'm about done with another book. I'm a reading machine right now, Brooke. I am a reading. I'm reading books. We're doing a book study as a staff right now, and I'm reading that book. I'm a library. But anyways, you can go to our website, thepraisepodcast.com, and you can get resources. You can join in the conversation there, find merch there, all kinds of fun things. So check that out. And that's kind of where you can stay connected with us. And we're going to talk about evangelism today, a big, fun, churchy word called evangelism. And so you're going to want to stick around for that part of our conversation. But before we get to that, we like to do this thing called Song Spotlight.
Yeah. Do you want to go first?
I think I will today. I think I will go first. So Song Spotlight, if you are new with us, Song Spotlight is just this little segment where Brooke and I are going to highlight a song that we have been listening to a whole lot recently that we think you might just enjoy. And we have taken this list. So we've done this podcast for like 3.5 years now, almost 4 years. And so we have
I literally don't even remember.
I don't know. It's been a long time. It's been a long time. And we have written down. That's what she's doing right now, writing down every one of these songs. And we've put it in a Spotify playlist for your listening enjoyment, which you can find at the website, thepraisepodcast.com. And so you can listen to literally any song that us or a guest has ever said on this podcast is on that playlist. And so it's a great spot to go and just hear a whole medley of different kinds of songs. So that's what we're going to do. I'm going to go first. My song is not a new song. It is let's see here. It is, so the song is by Elevation Worship, which we all know them. But it is an older song, and it is called Worthy.
It's really good.
It's really good. So I was trying to see, it's from their Hallelujah Here Below album. So, I mean, this album is, I don't remember exactly when this came out, but it's been several years at this point. But Worthy is the song, and I always forget how to get to the lyrics. There we go. So, where's the bridge? Be exalted now in the heavens as your glory fills this place. You alone deserve our praise. You're the name above all names.
What is the year that was?
I don't know. I need to try to find it.
It has a very, I don't think it's this, it couldn't be this old, but it does have a very 90s Christian feel. Like, especially that bridge, just the way that goes. It kind of makes you feel like, oh, like, I don't know. There was a time and space for that kind of sound. And it just reminds me of like the 90s.
2018.
Yeah.
So it's 7 years. Mm-hmm. Lots changed at this point. 90s, no, definitely not the 90s, but
it's got that vibe. And if you listen to it, you'll be like, oh yeah, especially when she gets to that bridge. It's there's something about it. It's really good.
It's got a really cool melody to it.
But I think that's why melodically,
it is
the way that it just goes.
The melody of the chorus is very creative, very catchy, and then but then it like gets real drivey in that bridge. And it's a good song. Yeah. It's a good, lyrically, it's a strong song. And just the posture behind the song is really good. And so, Worthy by Elevation Worship. You had mentioned that maybe, we're not sure if it's like actually an official, I know Carey and Cody like to do this song live. They'll mash it in, especially that bridge and that chorus. I don't know if they have an official version or not.
Yeah, I don't know, but that's how I know about the song. It was like a reel, and I don't know even who posted it, but it was just like Cody was leading it, and it was just, I was like, that's really good. But then I heard it, and it was so good. But then I went to the OG version. I was like, doesn't hit the same, but it's still very good.
That's your Carey bias showing.
Well, it was Cody. Well, it wasn't even, I mean, we're faithful, I guess, but it was just, and it's a female song. So then I feel like a lot of like male vocalists tend to just like not touch those, you know, and I feel like it's not strange for obviously like females, like altos like myself, like we can take a Cody song like nobody's business. It's just
you're always coming in on my territory.
Oh yeah, okay, yeah, whatever. But we did like, but I think there was one song that I thought Nate Carter would lead really well that we've done. And he was like, and it's a chick song, and he was like, "You're out of your mind." And I was like, "No, I think it could be really, really good." Yeah. I will revisit that one of these days. But Cody just proved that you literally can. Like a dude can take a chick song.
Well, yeah, for sure.
Like,
I'm sure he changed the key. 100%.
Well, of course. But again, we're not afraid to change the key.
Yeah.
So, anyways, that's a good song.
So, Worthy, Elevation Worship. What do you got?
My song. So every time I'm in the car, I'm an Apple Music person. I'm like Spotify is okay, but I never use it. And Pandora,
why did we put all of our stuff on Spotify? Was that just because it was free?
I don't know. We've got there's a lot of people who use Spotify.
Yeah, I know we're kind of probably rare by.
But I mean, like the church uses it for other things, so it's just
okay. So it just made because neither one of us are Spotify users.
But it can be accessed by more people. Where like not everybody can access Apple Music unless you like pay for it, really, or like really really utilize it that way. So anyways, I think
we're just having business conversation here on the podcast live.
Of course we are. Okay, so but every time I grab my phone and turn on music when I'm in the car, I just go to. It's really just like the homepage because it's just right there. But it's Eden. It's just so good.
Yeah,
Belonging Co. They're out. I'm just.
I'm trying not to use all of those songs on mine,
but you know what? That would just they need the fruit of that.
I agree.
You know what I mean? But we're gonna use them if they're good, and they are good. So, anyways, my song is from the Eden album from Belonging Company, and it is "Had It Not Been," and It was just so good. And you know what? I honestly might even, as we get talking this into the topic that we have today about evangelism, there's a story that I'll share that's just like personal and like something that I just had to walk through. And I'll come back. I think I will. I think why not? I'll come back to this song even then if I can. I say that, but if I can remember, we just get talking. But the chorus to this song. It says, had it not been for the Lord, had it not been for his grace, I'd still be stuck in chains. I'd still be in that grave. Had it not been for his love, how he chose to take my place, I would not be here today had it not been for the Lord. Yeah, and then the bridge is really great because it's like, Once a prisoner, now I'm free. I was blind, but now I can see. Was a doubter, now I believe in Jesus, in Jesus. So it's just, but it's it's like an upbeat song, really good, a lot of truth, really encouraging, but it just hit, and it wasn't even one, it just had been stuck in my head, which surprised me. But then, like, I almost later then, like, just days later, knew why. And hopefully I'll share more about that story in a little bit. But
that song, I like that song. It's one of the few songs that I listened to, and I thought, and this is just like internal drummer in me coming out, I was like, man, I would play that song completely differently, and it would totally change the song. But I'm like, I think this could be something totally different, and I really like it.
You say that about like how you would change the drumming side of it, whatever, and how it would change the song. One of my thoughts, I don't know, when I share the story, it's so hard to like know. We'll get into it in a minute, but like I literally had like such an encounter with this song that did not match the tempo of this song. Yeah. You know what I mean? And I'm like, this song, especially like lyrically and the weight of it, and when it like can mean something from the person actually like singing it, like you could change this song so many ways and it would have a whole different feel. And like, but I'm like, but that's why it's so good, because you can sing a song like this and it's like upbeat and so good, and yet you're like, oh, we could change the drums and it would totally change whatever. I'm like, yeah, and I'm thinking like you put Noah behind the keys and slow it way down and it would just be like, this really powerful, like emotional, like situation, and a song to take you to just a completely different posture. But I'm like, that's just when it's good, when it's just flexible, and you just know that it can stand on its own in a lot of different forms. And it makes me think of that song because, love Cody, but he was, when he or whoever it was wrote, Take You at Your Word, I believe is what it was. Yep. He's like, it started out as a very like whole different vibe, very slow, very this, very whatever. And then whoever like came on that team to like write it and we're working on it, he was showing them, and they completely flipped it and made it like this happy, fast, joyful song that now everybody knows. Yeah. And so, but like when that song was first put in his spirit, it was totally a different pace. And then the song, again, we know is not that. It is like, it's Sunday morning, like it's just like it's joyful bop, and I love it. But it makes me think of that. So music's so
I feel like most of the time, and I don't know, maybe it says something about our personality or whatever, but
You're
I
feel
like
I can speed it up, and I'm like, I can slow it down.
Yeah, I feel like there's just kind of that's a very common it's a common thing.
It is.
So that's okay. That's why it works. We usually land somewhere in the middle. All right. Amazing. So since you're like literally holding yourself back from talking about things, let's just jump right into it.
Well, I wouldn't say I'm that excited.
Yeah, well,
about
I know that, but I'm just saying,
it is hard to like talk around it,
yeah,
and it still makes sense for people who are like, "What is she doing?" Okay, so we kind of shared a while back that we had a few topics like on our mind to that we wanted to share like in an episode going forward. And one of the things that Eric wanted to bring up was evangelism. And like when that was on his list of topics, I mean, like I was like, well, that's cool. But like it wasn't one that I could immediately like feel like I would have anything to really like speak into much. But I feel like a lot of people would relate to me in that, because it is something that I'm like, I hear the word evangelize or evangelist or like whatever, and it's just a huge like turnaround, runaway moment for me. Like I don't think I am an evangelist. And like, honestly, it's like the people who, in group projects would like, no, I want to work alone. Like that's just my nature. Like it's my automatic response in a situation like that, to be around people, to not be around people, or to not like, I don't know. I have to make a huge effort to, especially with people I don't know, which I know people are like, but we joke, she's the most introverted extrovert we know. It's true. But like, until I know you, like I kind of tend to honestly, like avoid like people or conversation, or just because it's uncomfortable for me. And so then let alone have these conversations with a bunch of people who you don't know and about God, which, you're very passionate about and, you care a lot about. So then you almost feel like it's a very vulnerable spot to put yourself in with a bunch of strangers to share your faith and or even to, kind of insert yourself in a situation that's not godly, to then kind of challenge that to make it godly. Like, it's just uncomfortable for me. And, we do this thing at our church called Break and Shake every Sunday. And there are people who I know will literally leave the sanctuary, leave the worship center, and go to the bathroom when they think Break and Shake time is about to start. You know what I mean? Like, they just do not like the awkward, forced, like, encounter with other people. And I don't run away from Break and Shake, but I do find myself oftentimes running away from, like, anything that has anything to do with being an evangelist. And which is so funny because it's literally the last thing that the Lord instructs us to do. Jesus instructs us to do. He says, therefore, go out, like he's saying, go and tell, make disciples, baptize them. So, I mean, like, our whole, like, the last thing we're left with is mission, and it's action, and has everything to do with people, and not only just people, not only loving people, telling people about God, but with baptism, then the heart being like, you're not only telling people about Jesus to tell them about Jesus because you can check off a list. The heart is you tell them about Jesus because they're going to, like, encounter this transformative change. And so, I mean, it's a huge mission, and so we shouldn't be afraid of it, but I think that's exactly why we are afraid of it in our flesh, because it's exactly what the enemy would, like, want us to feel and do. And so anyways, that's the episode. I guess the topic of this episode, what it will consist of, is just kind of diving into more of, like, what is evangelism, and maybe, like, how we've experienced it, how we deal with it, how we overcome, like, fears with it, or how we just, there are people who thrive, the Prestons of the world, like, Preston Perry, he is Jackie Hill Perry's husband. Am I saying his name correctly? Mm-hmm. He just thrives. Like, that is just how he's wired. And he gets filled up when he's literally, like, talking to people, meeting people of different religions or atheists, around the world, I'm sure, like, about God, the God he serves. And so, anyways, we're all so different. But it's going to be, I think, a fun conversation to just kind of tag team talk about today.
Where this whole thing stemmed from me was I was listening to a podcast. Seems to be like, I bet we could start almost every episode we do with, like, I was listening to this podcast. We listen
to a lot of podcasts.
Yeah. But I was listening to this podcast, and they were talking about basically the state of evangelism in the church today, United States. And it was a staggering number it was over half. It was like 52. I mean, it wasn't like way over, but it was over half of people who profess to be a Christian, so a Christ follower, that said that, like, evangelism wasn't important, or, like, they didn't feel a pressing need to share their faith, evangelize. And I guess I started wrestling with it in the moment, because I was like, I'm with you on, like, most people look at me and see probably a fairly extroverted person. I'm really not that way, especially very same of if I don't know you, I'm very hesitant around you until I know you. And I don't let just tons of people in until I feel very comfortable. And I mean, I'm fine around people, but, like, I'm not the person that's just going to go, like, seek out a bunch of people to start talking and shaking hands. It's just not, like, if I know you, I will gladly go up and talk, but, like, if I don't know you, I'm not, like, the networking guy at a party that wants to go around and meet everybody. That's just not my personality. And so when I heard that stat, I got to think, I was like, because naturally for me, in the same way of, like, I'm not great at it. Like, I wouldn't call myself I guess I wouldn't call myself much of an evangelist as far as, like, just publicly not displaying, but like speaking it out, But then I was like, but gosh, I think it's important. Like, I don't think it's just because maybe I'm not doing it to the best of my ability. I still find it to be a very important thing. Mm-hmm. So then I got to wondering, I was like, well, do people really not find it important, or do we just not want to do it because either we don't know how, or maybe we don't feel like we're good at it, or it scares us, or we're just waiting for somebody else that is good at it to do it. I was like, so I just wondered, like, as I heard that stat, 'cause I was like, I mean, I wouldn't consider myself an evangelist, but I also find and believe there's great value in it, great importance to it. And as you mentioned, it is what we are commanded to do. Like, it is what Jesus left us with. And so just to kick us off, so we're at least on the same footing, because evangelism is kind of a churchy word. Mm-hmm. And so the definition of evangelism is the spreading of the Christian gospel by public preaching or personal witness. Another definition is zealous. So basically, like, if we need to get a definition for the definition, but you're very excited, you're very into it. Zealous advocacy of a cause. Mm-hmm.
Or advocate.
Yeah.
Like you're someone who's
you're
so
advocating for something. Yeah, you're so excited about it. You believe in it a whole lot. And so that's just kind of like a basic definition of what evangelism is. And so I guess, we could maybe start the conversation as two people who would sit here and say, like,
please don't call on me.
We believe.
Don't make me do it, Lord.
Yeah, like, we believe in the importance of it. We believe in the value of it. We know the Great Commission. We believe in that. So
how do we grow in it?
Yeah, how do we grow in it? Because what we were talking a little bit about before, and I kind of, I'm with you on whoever you were talking about, but basically beforehand, Brooke was talking. Tell them about what you were telling me with the podcast you were listening to about the professor was saying, or somebody was saying.
Yeah. Okay, so I was listening to a podcast.
We should just start sitting here and just saying, just go listen to this podcast. Yeah, when you're done, come back, and then we'll send you to another one.
Yeah, and I think that's why we just keep doing it, because we're like, well, we find so much value in them. But so I was listening to a podcast, and they were talking about this very thing, and they brought the question up. There's some quote, or like at least just like this manner or idea that a lot of people will, like Christians, will fall on, that like basically you should preach the gospel more with your actions than you ever should with your words.
It's that old quote that's like, preach the gospel and use words when necessary.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But like, use words when necessary. Yeah. And they were like, agree or disagree. And they were having this conversation about it. And, using theology and like all these things and just diving into it and just really challenging, your thinking about it, because, you hear things like this so much in like our culture. And so then you're just like, oh yeah, that's true. And like, oh yeah, that makes sense. So like, check, it sounds good. Like, I believe it. And then sometimes people go in and challenge you to be like, well, like, is that really biblical though? Like, is that good theology? And like, that's my whole thing in this season in my walk now with the Lord that I'm on, is just like really challenging myself of things that I believe about God or Christianity or whatever, or hear about it or whatever. Like, is it true? And God, like, is this accurate according to you? Like, is it good theology, or do you need to reshape something in my mind and heart and belief about you or about these things? So that's exactly what this, conversation was doing. And he basically was saying like how the idea of that is good, but basically he's like, but I disagree. He's like, evangelism is using your words. It's one thing to just love people, and of course that's part of it and it's necessary, but it's almost like there's an invitation to then only do that, and then an excuse to never use your words and letting your actions be enough, but yet never actually talking about the gospel or in depth. And so I don't know, that was just really good for me to kind of hear and absorb and reflect on, because I think there's truth to both. I think like he's right. Like, you know, the Bible, obviously one of the most important things, you know, you can do other than like love God with all your heart, soul, mind, strength, all the things. It's just like, and then love your neighbor. Like our actions matter as Christians. Like our actions will be a huge tell on where our heart lies with people and just, you know, right and wrong or how we handle things or whatever. Like our love for people like really, really matters. But then the challenge is, do we just say like, well, my love and kindness for people is godly and that's enough to show them God's love. And, you know, I'll pray for them. Like that's enough to, you know, do what I can there. And I would say in some circumstances, yeah, absolutely. But in all circumstances, is that evangelism? I would probably say no. If the definition of evangelism is literally like a person who seeks to, you know, tell other people about Jesus and there being this transformative encounter with him in the end of that, like, I don't know. I just don't think that actions with no words is evangelism.
So I was trying, as I was listening to that and I was wrestling through all that in my own mind, I was trying to, you know, basically reason into of like, oh yeah, I do it, but I just do it this way. You know, it's just different than that. But where I kept coming back to is basically like what you're saying is I have found that it's not enough to just try to live it out and hope people catch on, because I have done that. I have taken the route of I will let the way I live my life, I will let the way that I interact with other people
tell you
about God. And here's the hard reality of it. I can't live well enough or good enough or without sin enough to get them there.
Yeah. Well, like, even to not even to get, because I don't even think evangelism in our own strength could never get people into a relationship with Jesus, but it is like we are huge, I don't know if I would say vessel, but like it is a huge on ramp. You know what I mean? Like, but like at the same time, there are really, really kind people in the world and who live a way that is good and gracious and understanding and compassionate and generous and thoughtful and selfless, who do not believe in God. And so it is not enough, I truly would agree and say, for us as Christians to only bank on the way we live our life being the way we evangelize. You know, and I think there is a manner in which we walk with the Lord and we discern with him in conversations when people are ready, like we're planting the seeds and we're partnering with the Lord and we're, you know, use me, Lord, how you see fit. And different people need different things in different seasons. And so, you know, sometimes maybe like what the Lord might call me to say to someone else is going to be a little less straightforward maybe than like another person I come alongside with, and he just opens the door to really get after it because that person might just be more hungry than the other or more receptive or more, you know, the Lord only knows where these people are, you know, like, and how he can use us to best, I don't know, encourage them and enlighten them and share with them the gospel. And so that's another thing I think about. Like my approach might need to be different, you know, with depending on who I'm around, depending on my pre-existing relationship with this person, or if they're a total stranger. You know, I have to share this too. We do this thing called Staff Chapel. It's the first Tuesday of every month, and all of the staff come together, and we have lunch together. We sing a few songs, and then we hear a devotional. And we had one of our friends come, and they started watching Central Online. Him and his wife. Their names are Tim and Kit, and they started watching Central on TV, I think maybe WSIL or something, I don't know. And then finally got to the building. They live far away, so, you know, it was a trek to get here. It's a drive. And so then they were invested in the Mount Vernon campus, lost their mind knowing we were going to Carbondale because it's a lot closer for them and like their home. And so they were part of our like predominant like leadership team in launching this brand new campus. So like there's a lot of trust there. They love God. They're established in our church family, like just all of these things. And so, you know, he was just trusted to come in and pour into us and speak to us, whatever. And so you just sit with these people that you love, know, and trust, and who get ministry and who love God, and you're just like pouring it on it. And Tim is like the most outgoing in my mind, like not intimidated to speak to people. Like, you know, like he's just like, I don't know, a golden retriever in the room. Like he's always like happy and joyful, and like he will like
destroying things, Carey. And I'm just kidding. That's what my golden retriever.
No, your golden retriever does.
Sorry,
not
I'm a little.
Tim.
That was a trigger point for me.
Tim's a good. He's a good
boy.
Retriever, but he sees people in the room and he's like, oh, I'm gonna go love on them today, you know, and he'll just like go on over there and just talk to them and love on them, and just like and in his personality, it's like a natural thing for him to go and be like, so do you know God? Like, what is your relationship with Jesus like? Like, what's the background of your faith? Like, he's someone who would ask those questions, because it's like, hey, what's your name? Where you're from? I'm like, oh, do you know God? Are you a Christian? And like for us, I'm like, I almost come to that conclusion about someone after knowing them for a while, you know, if they are or not. But I say all that to say they were talking about their experience at this conference that they went to a while back. And I guess several, not several, but the people who accompanied him were people on our staff and for our Carbondale team. And they went to this conference, and one of the challenges was literally they got on this van, on this bus, whatever. They left the church campus as part of the activity. They went out into the public to literally just straight up the goal of being like, we're going to evangelize today. And we're going to just ask people if they know God. And if they don't, we're going to tell them about God. And then we're going to just see what the Lord does when we tell them about God. And so then you have someone like Tim, who is just like so excited about that. And immediately when I heard it, I'm like, I would have gotten off that bus.
Yeah, I would have went.
You know, like I would have been so intimidated to go and do that.
Yeah.
But you know, what's so wild is it's like they came back with just powerful testimony. They were emotionally moved by God and the powerful encounters they had with strangers in Texas, like just simply asking them a question, you know, and then like thinking like, if you were to die today, do you know for certain, do you know for sure that you would be in heaven with Jesus? And that's how like they literally would start these conversations. And I'm thinking like, that's pretty bold. Like, I don't even know how I would respond if someone just came up, I'm a Christian, I'm going to heaven, I'm going to see Jesus one day. And if someone came up and asked me that, I'd be like, oh, who are you? You know, like I would be like, wait, what? And so again, like it was so wild to see like the contrast of where I am when it comes to evangelizing. And like, then we're like these people who I love and who are great influences in my life, and like other pastors like Jared and Maria, like all these people, like where they are with evangelizing. And like, they were literally moved to tears, and they saw 5 salvations just by doing this activity. And like, that is literally what it's all about. But somehow, and for some reason, I'm with the crowd of people who always get stuck of like, I'm really honestly not even sure how to do that. And I'm very uncomfortable, like being made to like, and then thinking, but there's this little spot in me that's convicted by it. So I'm like, okay, Lord, like, what are you about to show me? What are you about to teach me? Because I love talking about God. I love small group time because it's just like, I love being with a group of people who love God and we're talking about God, but I'm rarely in situations with groups of people who don't know God. And ironically enough, one of the only times that I am, you know, is when I'm with my immediate family, you know, and then like, that's then I think when the Lord starts to do work, when they're like, it's not even just strangers in a Hobby Lobby that I'm talking about evangelizing to. It's like, it's your bloodline. It's your family. Like these are your people. And then there's just, so I mean, I'm just on this fresh journey of learning and discovering, but I know I'm not the only one. But I think it's kind of exciting for us to just kind of pause and like invite the Lord into that, and to be like, okay, what about this that I genuinely have been avoiding? And I see it and I count myself out of it, you know, like I see books about evangelism, I just breeze right past them, you know. What about this now, Lord, do you want to develop in me? And like, that's, I think, where we kind of are. Yeah.
And the crazy truth, or not necessarily truth, I guess reality behind a lot of it is a lot of times it would feel easier to go up to the stranger and have that conversation than the immediate family, you know, and to dive into that. And obviously there's a lot more known layers going into that conversation than is for somebody you have no idea who they are. But yeah, I think that is where I was left with this thought, was not a bad conviction, but just a conviction behind it of it's not enough to just let it all come to you and play out. Like, yes, those things are going to happen, and yes, sometimes conversations will naturally come about and things will naturally happen and you get to have that conversation. But I am surrounded by plenty of people, both friends and family, that, it's, you say, like I would say, like, I greatly care about them, but then it's like, if I greatly care about them, how am I not feeling at least more pressure, more, what's the word? I'm blanking on the urgency, to have those conversations, as kind of bold and profound as it is, also the simplicity behind, if you were to die today, are you 100% sure where you're going? And it's like, that's a loaded question, but also really a simple question in a lot of ways. And so, I think that's where I've just seen, I've allowed myself to fall into the category of, well, I do this, I do that speaks for itself, or, I did that one time. And so, like, I'm evangelizing, I'm doing that. The reality is, it's not that that's not, but is it enough, I think, is where I'm at right now. Like, is it, do I, because I feel a great urgency about a lot of things. And so it's like, what is holding me back from, and I feel an urgency about this in a way. So then it's like, kind of like you're saying, like, okay, then Lord, like, you need to start revealing what are the things within me that I need to start being more intentional about in prayer, or, picking out of, like, I need to focus on, like, this is a pride thing, or this is a fear thing that I need to be praying against, or I need to be figuring out, like, what are these things that are keeping me from this, because I recognize this as important. I recognize it as a command from you. I recognize it as just a God-honoring thing, like this, because if we are both very in on God, like, we're both very excited about God, like, we would fall in the zealous category about God. So then what is keeping that from being even more? Like, what's the next level of that?
Right.
That it's time to step into. And so.
Yeah. And I think too, there's a part of that in my brain, you hear these words like preacher, teacher, evangelist, all these things. And then, I think, like, well, what's the difference of those three things? Because sometimes, again, I'm genuinely asking because I don't know, but, like, they'll talk about, like, the gifts, or, even people's titles and different kinds of churches. And so what is the difference between someone who's a preacher, someone who's a teacher, and someone who's an evangelist? Or is it really all just the same thing? Like, I really don't know. And I just think, I guess for my brain, if anybody else is like me, a preacher, I feel like, is someone who, I just think of who, like, leads the sheep, like, you're taking care of the church, like, you're sharing the gospel and you're passionate about that, like, but, like, it's majority of it, and, like, you're pouring into and you're sharing the gospel with people, majority of which in the room are already Christians, like, they've already converted in their faith, with the understanding that there's a portion for sure in the building who haven't yet, but the majority, I would say, like, are Christians. And so again, these are just to clarify Brooke's thoughts, Brooke's questions. That's it. So then I think, like, okay, so when you're a preacher and you're sharing the gospel, what's the difference between him and a teacher? Because a lot of, so what's, like, literally, if you're literally teaching someone about the gospel, but I also think, someone how they present the gospel, explain the gospel, like, maybe just the way that they, go about that is just in a different format than, like, as a preacher, or it's like speaking, than someone who is a teacher. And, like, whether, like, again, a teacher is one who, like, maybe how they present or what they present, to the depth of what they present, or how connections they make, like, just lands differently. Or I don't know. So I'm like, okay, is that the difference, the two? And then, like, an evangelist, I think, is like, I'm like, okay, well, if literally an evangelist is someone who, like, preaches the gospel, then isn't a pastor an evangelist, And then you just think some pastors aren't very zealous to like go convert. And so then again, with the majority thing, I'm like, is an evangelist someone who goes out like specifically to people who are not Christians, like they know they are not Christians, with the whole like intent being like, I'm going to tell you about Jesus Christ, and my prayer is that you follow him and believe him and make an eternal difference in your life. And so it's like, although that would be the heart of all three, I feel like there's almost this game plan that an evangelist has that maybe the other two don't. Or is it all the same thing? I don't know. Someone answer this question for me. I need to call Steve Smith. Like I need to do something, but these are just questions that, just never had to sit and ask myself before.
Yeah. No, and I mean, I think there's a lot to that. And I think that like, I also don't think though, cause like you mentioned, like we do all have our certain giftings, and like, I know that, just because I feel an urgency or a need to, think with a more evangelistic mindset and heart, that doesn't mean I need to head to the courthouse square and start just preaching. You know what I mean? Because that may not be what my gifting is, but I can be more aware of when I am in those moments with friends, with family, with people sitting, you're in those random conversations with the server at, dinner where things pop up, or, I think it's almost just it's a mindset where, your vision almost changes to like, how do I see people, and what am I really like? Am I looking for, what opportunities are you looking for? We'll pray for opportunities to do this or that. And so it's like, am I open? And do I have my eyes open to see the opportunities? And then when I see them, am I ready and willing to step into those and to speak and to share?
And I think that answers your first like the question you just asked. Yeah. Well, didn't you ask like, how do I go deeper?
Yeah.
And I feel like that would be like the first step we could take is just like being prayerful to be like, what about evangelizing? Do I just like, am I afraid of, and asking God, like, grow me in this, show me this. Like if there's something in this area of me that you want to prune and change and develop, like let's rock and roll, and do that and just go on that journey with the Lord. And then also so you're not only just praying, asking God, like, come in and do work in me, but then also there's this like applicable like aftermath of that. So you're not only asking for the growth, but then you're being tested in the growth. And so then the growth then becomes, being at a restaurant or being in a situation or with a group of people who, like aren't Christians or don't believe in God. And, taking like this intentional time because you have the eyes to see these opportunities, to witness to them and to share the gospel or to start a conversation or just to ask a question that would do it. So I feel like, step one, then step two. Like, I feel like those are practical things that we can do to like, grow deeper. And so I think that's a perfect segue into like the story I wanted to share, kind of vaguely, but at the same time, all is well. But this is a new thought for me, right? And so we've been praying. That's kind of a thing. Grow me, Lord. And then it felt like, okay, then the test came of like, okay, recognizing like, oh, this could be a situation where I really could kind of have time to practice like this evangelism piece in my heart that you're kind of stirring. And so I went to visit my immediate family, and I flew down and just was spending a few days with them, and definitely like thought like this is a really great opportunity for many reasons, just to see if I can find an intentional time, like to, I mean, genuinely just like talk, like, are you going to have like talk about God or to, and with people who I'm, might believe in God. Some of them I know do believe in God, but then you're just kind of like, but how much of your life is fruit of that, And so that's kind of where I'm at with my family. And I've always felt like almost like the black sheep. And so then when I'm in situations with my immediate family, it just can be very uncomfortable really fast, very discouraging very fast. and then like the tension of light and darkness like is very real. And so you're just waiting, like all these emotions and thoughts of like, I'm very different than them, and you're like, but I don't want to seem better than, or like, I don't want to offend them if I say something. I don't want them to come off like, because then you're like, am I creating a wedge if I like say something that goes against like what they just said, or that's almost in like a form of correction, or like, it was just like so hard. And like, I literally spent these 3 days and just like torment, kind of like I was enjoying my time with my family. Like, don't get me wrong, it was like fun, and I for sure believe I was supposed to be there, and all these things, there's plenty good about it, but like it was like I would see opportunities that I could have done something or said something or whatever, and I just didn't. And I remember getting back on the plane to come home, and it was like or not even that, I was at the gate. I was literally like through TSA at my gate waiting to get on the plane. And it was the first time I had been like alone in like that span of time. And I just like didn't even know I needed to cry. And like, I was just sitting at my gate, looking out the window, waiting for my plane. And like the next thing I know, I'm just weeping. And I'm early, so there aren't too many people around. And I was like, wow, thank you, Lord. Like, this is kind of embarrassing. But then it was just a moment of like the weight of it, like the weight of, just, I think for the first time in a long time, being in a situation with my family that I wanted to be intentional about, sharing about the gospel or talking about the Lord or encouraging or even challenging or even just being okay, being different than them. And like, I don't know, I feel like I'm so used to it. I just expect it. I just am in and out and I don't think about it. And it's just the first time maybe ever, if not in a very long time, that I felt the weight of it, the weight of the tension and the weight of maybe this responsibility to evangelize that I've never felt. And so, yeah, it was super emotional. But, and then I remember, getting on the plane and this book that I was reading, well, and we'll talk about it later, but, it's called Your Story Has a Villain, and it's for sure going on the website for our next recommendation. Like, it's one of our favorites. And we, I've been listening to the sermon series from the pastor that goes along with this book, and it's all about spiritual warfare. And here I am, like 100 pages in on the plane, and it's just so much of it is literally my real life, real time situation with what I'm walking through. And, so then I'm off the plane and then I get to the car and the first song that comes on when I start is Had It Not Been. And, reading those lyrics and singing those lyrics, still just feeling the weight of what my last few days had been through, feeling like I had failed because I had opportunities. I saw the opportunities and I still did not like take them or even feel confident in to know how. And I'm listening to this upbeat song by Belonging Company called Had It Not Been. And I'm just weeping, but of gratitude though, for God, like, because I felt like if it had not been for you, God, like that would be like me, like that would be like, I'm just comparing myself, the freedom that I feel like I have, the gratitude of salvation that I carry, the hope that I have, the gifts that the relationship, the Holy Spirit, like all these things that I have because of God. And it was just like, if it had not been for you, I would be exactly where everyone else in my family is. And it was just this weird, undescribable, like weighty gratitude that I had on the car ride home that I was just so thankful for. But again, because that became, it's just my real life. It just was like, all right, let's talk about it on the podcast. Like evangelism is an important thing and we've got to figure out a way to grow in it even when it's uncomfortable for us because, well, honestly, for a lot of reasons. But yeah. I've been talking for a long time. It's your turn. Tag.
No, just because I had just sat in that airport gate or whatever that you had been into, I was just thinking, I was picturing you in that gate, and I was like, it's like a movie scene.
It really was. Yeah, a pretty drama. She's dramatic. No, I had my blueberry iced coffee from Dunkin' Donuts in one hand and like just had a Dunkin' Donut napkin in the other. And I was like hiding behind like my hair, like looking down at the floor, like also just, on my phone or whatever. And like just tears. Don't feel sorry for me. And we're fine. But like just teardrops would just like hit the floor. And like I wasn't even like, when you're crying and you're like heavily breathing, you're like, like that's laughing.
Like that's a different kind of hysterical there.
Yeah. But you know what I mean? Like when you're heavy, like when you're weeping, you're just like your back's like people can tell like your back's moving, you're breathing funny, you're snotty, whatever. Yeah. And I was just completely still, completely still and could not see because of the tears. And they were just like wailing from my eyes. And it was just such a deep, I think my spirit was crying is really what it was. But I mean, the Lord and I had a moment we needed to have. And I will say, about that though, is community really matters in your walk with Jesus because, I had that this Saturday and had that weight going into a Sunday. Here we are charged to lead worship and, show up and do all the things. And I was singing and whatever, but still had this like weird, lingering feeling in my spirit. And Mama Hope was on praise team that weekend and, we kind of got to talking about it. And she was encouraging me because she's like, and this goes back to what we talked about earlier. She was like, Brooke, like you have to give yourself a little grace. And she's like, and you have to remind yourself that like you showed them God in so many situations, even though you didn't use your words. And so then again, I have that from Mama Hope in my brain. And then, here's this podcast literally like calling that out and challenging that thought. And then it's like, but that's where I land where I land on it because it's just like, is it good to be godly with your actions? 1000%. And can people see and experience God and know there's something different about you because of the Holy Spirit, even if they have no idea who the Holy Spirit is? Absolutely. They can tell. And there are going to be moments, and I pray for more moments to come, where I'm also going to have to use my words to intentionally have conversations with my family, and encouraging them and challenging them in their faith, or even for some of them to come to the faith. And so again, I don't think that as before, I would almost feel like a relief. It'd be like then every encounter I have with my family, I can just be nice and be godly. But so it's enough. I don't have to say anything. And it's just like, but because I now feel like this urgency, it's just like, no, I need to do that and take this initiative when the doors are there, for these conversations that need to happen. Yeah. And when you think about eternal life, and I think about my baby sister, it's just like you have to talk about it. And so I think that's like the old me before the Lord started doing this work would have been so fine. It would feel sufficient enough to show up and just act godly, through my actions. But then when it's like people know, it's like, yeah, that's when the urgency is birthed. That's when it finally hits you that like, no, you are to go and you are to tell. And then like, I feel like that and to accompany that also like with strangers, like I truly believe the Lord will develop that same kind of compassion on these people who don't know God, that then I'm thinking, oh, well, like, let me lay down myself for a second and pick up my cross because this is very uncomfortable for me. But because I feel the urgency more than I feel the fear to like tell you about the one who did the same for you, who picked up his cross, who died for you. And like, and the reality of heaven and hell are very real, even though we don't maybe not talk about it as often as we should, at least hell, And so I don't know. I just feel like when we let the Lord do a work in us to be brave enough to evangelize, he does. And then it all of a sudden begins to make sense, why that was the last set of directions like we were left with before he you know.
Yeah.
I sent it. So yeah, it's
Yeah.
just big
Well,
deal.
I think there is a reminder that we all have to have of that is our job, is to go and tell. But at the end of the day, he is the one that will do the work, and on that front. And I think sometimes we put so much pressure on ourselves to, whether we want to say it's an out or whether it's a real thing of, well, I don't know enough, or I'm not the right person to say it, or I'm not this or that. And that reality is the instruction was not go and have all the answers. It's just go and tell, and let him, do the work. And so that's something I've been trying to remind myself, as well. Just like, I don't, you don't have to have all of it figured out. You just need to go and tell.
That's really good.
And let him, and then let him do with that. Yeah. With your let him do with your obedience what he was meant to do with it.
Yeah. And I think too, I kind of alluded to it, but even what Hope spoken to me of like giving yourself grace, like when you're in situations and you feel like I did not take that opportunity, and like don't let the guilt of that be all consuming. Like give yourself some grace and be patient with yourself and because God is patient with you. God is gracious towards you. So be that way for yourself too. And literally I remember praying and telling Lord, Lord, I'm sorry if that was if I disappointed you, or I'm sorry that I know you showed me exactly what to do and I disobeyed. Will you just, help me, all the things. And then I remember saying the next time I can just say anything about you, I'm going to. And we had been, when I was there, one of my sisters was looking for a new job and found one that could not be anymore for her. And she had an interview and she got a second interview, but it would have been when I was back home. And so I had on my calendar to not only keep praying for her in that situation, but also to just text her. And so she knew I remembered to, just check in and make sure she knew she was seen and all that. And so, I check in with her on Tuesday and she's like, I'll let you know, I'll be done around 4, so I'm waiting, oh Lord, please let her get it, all these things. And she calls back and she gets the job and she's so excited. And I was immediately, and that was just look what God has done. And they used that opportunity to be we celebrated together, all these things. And everything out of my mouth was just oh my goodness, look how God is providing for you. Look how much he cares. this could not have been any more from him. What a gift, all these things. And she was yeah, I'm really excited, And so, but I'm again, even that is a seed just to say his name and how I praise, I'm meeting her excitement, and how I praise, I'm hoping, is kind of just catches her attention, of who does the glory go to? I'm excited, but why? And because of who? And so, I mean, even just that little seed, I'm I told the Lord, I'm going to take the next opportunity I get. And then 2 days later, I'm I'm taking this opportunity. So I don't know, be gracious towards yourself. Yeah. And
just we were talking with the book that we were reading there, I mean, too, the enemy will use that as to see you failed again, or see you can't do that, or you're not good enough to do that, or there you go again, and it's those are all little things that will plant. It's that's why the grace side is so important, because it is a God, I'm sorry, give me give me another shot, and the next time, and then the next time comes and here you are, and so it's so just it's that.
So for the people, to summarize.
Yeah, to summarize.
So let's see if I can remember all of them. Yeah. First thing is identify it in yourself. If you are anything like us and struggle in this, identify that in yourself and begin to pray and ask the Lord how he can grow you in this area. Second step would be to then use opportunity to have the eyes to be able to see and identify reason or ways in I don't know, situations where you can practice evangelizing to people, whether you know them or they are strangers in Walmart that you come across. So then the next thing we said was essentially, well, there was one before the grace one. Now I'm forgetting.
I don't know.
You have to replay it.
Have
but
to go back.
So, yeah.
All that to be said, give yourself grace.
Yeah, but truly, give it a try and give yourself grace. Yeah. Oh, the one before that was trust God to be the one to ultimately do the transformational work in these people. And so you just be the vessel, and then through you, he does through his power. He's the one who makes these changes and meets these people. And you're just kind of this avenue, really for them to get to meet him by and through, I guess you could say. And then just keep doing it and keep practicing and go easy on yourself and keep learning about it. And just, I feel like those are I think my brain could leave this conversation with those quick little blurbs of how to, I don't know, try it out.
Try it out. Well, okay. There's that. Thank you all for being with us. Thank you for listening. Of course, we'll remind you, you can always join in the conversation. So if there's anything, you've got questions or you've got thoughts, we want to hear them. And so you can always do that. You can email either of us, Eric at thepraisepodcast.com or Brooke at thepraisepodcast.com. Or you can always go to the website, thepraisepodcast.com, and you can join in the conversation there right on the homepage and send a question or comment or thought in. Or if you're watching on YouTube, you could put the comment right down below. Of course, we always want to encourage you, hit that like and subscribe button. That helps the podcast get seen by more people, as well as keeps you up to date in all the ways and all the hows that we release stuff on here. If you're listening, we always appreciate you doing that. You can always find the podcast on all major podcasting platforms. Go over to Instagram. You can hang with us on there, Praise Podcast. And other than that, that's pretty well all the ways to be all things Praise Podcast. So good conversation today. And hopefully this will spur some thoughts in you, spur some contemplation, some maybe challenge you. I know it's challenged us. So challenge you in your faith and in this thing that is evangelism. It doesn't have to be intimidating, it doesn't have to be scary, and it's something we're called to do. So we would love to hear testimonies from how you went out, and whether it's friends, family, a stranger at Walmart, we would love to hear testimony of just how that went for you. And
if you're a pro and this is a gift you have, will you email us some encouragement and tips and tricks so that we can use that on the streets?
For sure. Yes, for sure. So we appreciate you guys joining us. As always, we love you. Let's be people in every day, every way that bring the praise we see.